Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, a podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, we feature professional Scrum trainers and other Scrum practitioners sharing their stories and experiences to help learn from the experience of others. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast. I'm your host today, Patricia Kong. Today we have two professional Scrum trainers, Claudia Califano. Claudia is based in the UK, and we also have Todd Miller, who's based in Pennsylvania in the United States. All right, so a little bit of background for you today, listeners. At Scrum.org, we've been focusing on how we can help individuals on Scrum and Agile teams develop their skills. So as individuals, what could they do to get better? So we've been thinking about this, and I reached out to Claudia Todd earlier in the year, probably earlier this year, and said, we need to try to really help people figure out how they can work a little bit more effectively with their teams. And what do you do when that person's just even starting on their journey? So I know that I reached out and we were talking, and then we started talking about, one of the most underrated skills, one of the most underrated techniques and tools and principles is facilitation. So we started thinking about that. And lo and behold, we created a course. So that's really cool. We have a 1-day course or 8-hour course that's out there. So today I get to talk to them, the co-creators of the course. We worked obviously a lot with other Scrum.org professional Scrum trainers and even outside of the community. But today I really want to take that time, pick your brains, and I will be trying to get your best tips, your mistakes, your worst mistakes out of you, and what you think that we should be really focused on and working on with teams in terms of facilitations. So, hey, Todd and Claudia.
Hi.
Hi. All right. So before we get started, speaking of underrated, I promise this to both of you. And in terms of facilitation, here's a little something that I'd like to ask for. Todd, give me 15 seconds of your best rant right now when you think about facilitation. What's that?
Okay, I got one. I don't think we've discussed this one before. So my best rant, 15 seconds, is that only a Scrum Master needs facilitation skills. Everybody talks about how a Scrum Master needs to be a great facilitator, but I'll tell you what, as a product owner, having facilitation skills as a previous product owner in the past, you need them. Rant end.
That was a rant. It sounded like a great teaching moment. Okay, Miss Claudia, your 15-second rant about facilitation, go.
Right. My rant is about that I do see a lot of over facilitation or facilitation just for the sake of it, and that people just come out of let's say a Scrum event and actually there's no action coming out of a retro, or you don't meet the outcome, but people just facilitate things without understanding why.
It sounds a lot. It made me think of flaccid facilitation. I said that, like, there's a lot that we could do, and then you just kind of don't follow up, and it just dies. And then yours is a great myth. So why don't we get started, Todd, with yours? Why do you think people think that Scrum Masters are the ones that should be facilitating? Why are the Scrum Masters the one that invest in it the most?
I'm not really sure. I know that a Scrum Master as a facilitator is a stance that's been written about quite a bit and has been really documented. And I don't disagree that I think a Scrum Master needs to have a good amount of facilitation skills. Then I start to think about and put myself in situations that I've been in the past as a product owner with stakeholders that don't quite disagree, with having attended a million meetings that have no purpose and offer no outcomes, kind of to what Claudia's rant was all about. And I think about how one of the most under leveraged Scrum events, the sprint review, is oftentimes just a meaningless PowerPoint presentation where nobody talks and everybody leaves. So that's been a rant I've kind of been rolling with for about a year now. But I know I mentioned product owner here, but I just think about how useful the skill of facilitation is to a product owner in what a lot of my career has been. The most dicey situations for me have been when I was a product owner. And it really helped to have some facilitation skills at those moments.
So for both of you then, I'm just wondering if you are coaching a team, or you're on a team, you're Scrum Master, developer, product owner, and you see that it's always a Scrum Master who's facilitating, what suggestions would you have to kind of loosen that up? Where would you have that conversation?
First reaction is a really good Scrum Master is going to maybe recognize the fact that they're facilitating too much and offer developers the opportunity to facilitate their own retrospectives, right?
That's awesome. What if you're not a very good Scrum Master?
Right. Then I mean, so developers and product owner, you own the process too. So step in and offer to facilitate. Maybe if it's we haven't done the rant yet, which I think we'll probably get to, Gladia, about facilitating and participating, right? That this is something that we've had a lot of conversations on, and we get a lot of Rosh's like reactions to, that you can't facilitate and participate. People think you can. We don't think so necessarily, but my reaction is like, everybody owns the process. It's not just the Scrum Master that is running around scheduling events. I don't know.
That's a good reminder. Gladia, what are you thinking?
The only thing, the thing of that I think of is that people just, first of all, make people aware of it, that it's not just a Scrum Master job. And I think, you know what I mean?
It's like, here's actually what you do. Just
No.
Just talk.
No, or it's not only the Scrum Master who facilitates. So, and just make people aware of it. I've worked with a lot of I think that's different as well. I worked with a lot of developers who, for example, have a community of practice, and you have developers then facilitating that community of practice for the development people. UX the same. So I think people actually do facilitate already within companies. I think it's just to reiterate that when it comes to a Scrum team or the Scrum events, that can be done as well.
That's true. All right. So over to your rant, Claudia. And then, of course, Todd brought up some more, but I know people are looking to see where facilitation is appropriate. And so you brought up in your rant kind of this misplaced intent. There were a couple of things like, we just think that facilitation is I go there, I do something, and then I leave, and that's it. The event is over. That's cool. What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about this in terms of like liberating structures? Are you thinking about this in terms of just not being prepared and understanding what facilitation is? What causes people to just kind of, I'll try something, but I did my job, and just walk away?
I think we sometimes just get very hung up on techniques and formats. And there are some really awesome, for example, retrospectives formats. There are some awesome formats there. But what I do see is that sometimes we run into this mechanical way. We use the format, but not really understanding why. Or we use a certain technique, but we don't really understand why, what the benefits are of using that particular technique. What do we want to get out of it? And then we lose track of the outcome of the event, for example, as well, because we're so busy doing this awesome format and these awesome techniques that we just actually forget, it's more about the outcome, facilitating people to a shared outcome and objective. And I think that's the thing that we need to bring it back to a bit more. So yeah, awesome techniques that can help you. But I think always keeping an eye on that objective, what you want to come out with, I think is probably more important.
That's really something to explore a little bit, because there's a danger in that. So it's like, oh, we're trying to have fun. And then I have talked to several, well, it's actually in two camps. I've talked to engineers and I've talked to managers. I don't know, Todd, if you've had these conversations too, where they're just like, it's just that those, I am not, why can't we, what is this? Why do we need to have this facilitated again? What are we doing with this 1, 2, 4 all, or this 35 or the 25% or all these things? And I think that that's what happens when we don't think about the outcome. So they've experienced these things, and then it kind of just falls through, and they feel like they're just playing games and they're not really interested in that. So
yeah, I think facilitation is not just going out and collecting a whole bunch of different techniques that you can pull out of your hat at any given moment. to Gladia's kind of whole point here, right? Like you can go into a retrospective and you can talk about your missing taco ingredient, right? And not really come out with anything but more than we're going to do better next time, right? So it's like and I'm not busting on Taco Tuesday. It's just
it's just a good Taco Tuesday.
Speaking to that, but I've gone into something like a retrospective with very little format in mind, but a few ideas of things that I felt like there was things happening with tension on the team, right? And so like you can have a loose format, but it's the way that you kind of ask questions, and I don't want to say lead. I don't necessarily know that that's true, but kind of just be able to pivot the conversation so that people are getting out what they need to get out, right? And that you're also coming out with an output that isn't just let's be better. Right?
So let's talk about this then really quickly. Good versus bad facilitation. You know it when you're experiencing it. What, Claudia, to you is an example, because you just brought up one example, like we don't have next steps. What else is bad facilitation look like?
I think it comes back a bit about the mechanics again, just running through the mechanics. But also I think pushing people through, if you're biased, for example, and pushing people through a certain, solution that you want, you know what I mean, instead of actually, getting the team to explore towards an outcome. So I think pushing your own ideas, and one really simple one that I make myself so guilty of, like often is, I think you need to be comfortable with silence, and especially in a virtual space. And sometimes we just jump in too quickly, but just, I think, leave that silence for people to explore as well.
That's a hard one, but yes. So you tapped on the elephant in the room. All right. So Todd, you talked about this. When you are facilitating, can you participate? That's the whole notion of facilitation and neutrality. I think we talk about that for coaching, also coaching and neutrality. All right. So if I'm a Scrum Master and I am in the sprint retrospective, I'm facilitating the sprint retrospective. Am I neutral? Do I stay back and go, hey guys, a little PDCA, let's do a fish, what is that thing called? Fishbone. What do you guys think about the notion of facilitation neutrality when you think about that in terms of a Scrum team, and how it might be somebody on the Scrum team who's facilitating that conversation?
I think that when it comes to participating and facilitating at the same time, that it's impossible to do without coercing. So to Gladia's point, Gladia, you were mentioning earlier that you can mold your facilitation stance into the outcome that you are expecting or that you want. I think that facilitating and participating at the same time is impossible to do that without coercing. I'm saying that from my experience, me doing it, because I've made mistakes there before. I'm like, this is what I want out of this retrospective, so I'm going to facilitate, and then I'm going to steer it with my participation.
Tell us how you did that. Tell us and our friends.
Oh yeah, so I mean, I can think of a particular time when there was tension between two teammates, and I basically did everything I could to set up the tension between those two teammates and have them call it out to one another and come up with a resolution for it. And the resolution that I wanted was that they would work together on things more, right? That they would pair program, because I felt like that was a good idea for how they could potentially resolve it. And I steered them down that path. And then I got to listen to days of them arguing while they're pair programming together, right? But I thought I was being sneaky and really getting them to, pair program, offer these things up. And so like I was a Scrum Master and I had a retrospective and I was doing it. This is coming to mind. I still remember this as like yesterday, but it was many years ago. Yeah, it didn't work.
Thanks
So
for
that's
sharing
that's kind of coercive, right? It's like me being.
Yeah, I mean, just picturing it. Like, don't you think you? Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
Claudia, what about you in terms of what is your opinion about facilitation and participation neutrality, especially on a Scrum team?
I think for me, it's quite a difficult one for on the Scrum team, just purely because, of course, if you look, at the retrospective where the whole Scrum team, will participate. But I do think you just need, I think for me, it's more being aware of the trade-offs, like Todd mentioned. So actually, I've seen Todd in action doing it quite well, where he, for example, said when he was facilitating a retrospective or facilitating an event where he said, I've put my Scrum Master hat now on. And then 10 minutes later, he says, I'm now going to put my developer hat on. So, and I think that was quite a good, I think you did that very well, Todd. So I think that was a very good compromise. I think you just need to think of the trade-offs that it brings. But yeah, I think that's one of the things. So yeah, so I'm a bit on the fence as long as you're aware and you have the trade-offs on it.
All right. Well, congratulations, Todd, on being a great communicator.
Yeah, the one time I did something okay this year.
Well, so this course that we launched, professional Scrum facilitation skills, is really taking this notion of facilitation and saying, in a Scrum team, in a Scrum environment, through all the different venues, how can we apply facilitation? Because I know we've talked about sometimes it's just a little bit of a better facilitation would be more effective. And I know that there's the opinion of it's a small team. Why do you need that? Why do you need that? And the person facilitating is probably just the person who can't do the work. So, when we think about that, I would love to know from your experiences. And Todd, let's start with you, because you and I have argued about 50 scenarios like this of our experiences. What is something where you've seen something just go off the rails and not work well in a Scrum team or at a Scrum event? And what did you do, or what did you observe maybe the Scrum Master do during the, from a facilitator stance? What happened that changed it?
Yeah, I feel like we've been talking about sprint retrospectives quite a bit. So I think maybe we can use a sprint review, right? And so like a sprint review, that I can think of this happening many times. But I can think of one particular instance where in a sprint review there was a set agenda, right? We're going to talk about A, then B, then C, then D, then E, and honestly, it was a little bit of always being married to that agenda that caused stakeholders not to participate, until a stakeholder that really was the person that held the purse strings a lot in this instance lost it. And we're like, what are you doing? They're like, I don't see, this is not this. All of this seems like you're going in the wrong direction. I don't even know why we have these meetings, because you don't listen anyway. And in that particular instance, the whole Scrum team froze. They were not expecting that at all. They were caught off guard with it. The product owner was caught off guard with it. The Scrum Master was caught off guard with it. And it was just like dead and utter silence. And then the meeting was like adjourned because of it. And so that was like an instance where I think had a person, maybe including myself, maybe I should have taken action. I was an advocate coach in that regard. Maybe I should have stopped, put my facilitation pants on and done something about it. But instead it was just decided to adjourn the meeting, and really one-on-one conversations and unproductive things happen. I mean, productive things and unproductive things happen. But I think in that very moment, that was an opportunity that was missed for someone to step in and facilitate and maybe drive to an outcome. Like misaligned expectations were there, something was going on, things weren't transparent. And rather than just trying to follow an agenda, and because the agenda was kind of thrown a wrench at it, it just was like, okay, well, the meeting's over now.
Well, let's get in that time machine. Put on your facilitation hat and your facilitation pants, and what would you have done? Let's try it. This meeting is terrible.
Yeah, I think that it's okay to say, let's take 5. Can we take 5 minutes?
Yeah. People don't think of that as facilitation. Like, just breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of that, Claudia? That's facilitation, being cognizant of when to take 5 minutes.
Absolutely, taking a break, I think, is such a good
environment. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe
yeah.
having that person talk with the product owner one-on-one, figure it out, and then come back and just like, we had a call-away conversation about this. You're right, we're out of alignment. This is what we need to do now.
And the alignment and the outcomes. Yeah. Claudia, what about for you? What Scrum event do you think really could use with some better facilitation? And what is some easy things for, let's say there are, people who are on a Scrum team, they're looking for something to fall back on. There's that event that's just always painful to go to. What are your tips for making that a little better?
Just thinking, I do agree with Todd, by the way, but the sprint review, and my experience that runs into the most, not most problems, but you know what I mean, that you see that it gets misunderstood. I think the next one that can be painful for people, sprint planning, when it's not facilitated correctly, because people go like, oh, I just have to sit here for hours in a room, you know. It's like, which it shouldn't be, but you know, I do see that. I think sprint planning is an interesting one. I think you can just over plan or completely under plan. Or so I think sprint planning. Okay, I started in Scrum in 2004, long time ago. We did monthly sprints back then, and we would plan everything quite in detail. I think over the years, sprint planning and planning something for a sprint have become so much more lightweight. The focus is now very much on the sprint goal, and you can just plan in the first few things that, you know, to get you started into the sprint. So I think kind of getting people to understand that they don't have to plan everything in detail, you know, for them. If you have a 2-week sprint, it also makes people a bit more comfortable as well. So with, you know, things that they're not really, you know, if they know that they don't have to plan in for the, you know, have to know everything in detail, it can flow the conversations a bit better as well.
So what would your advice be to someone who, tell me if you've heard this one, I think we've all experienced this, with the sprinkle, everything you get to planning, you think this is going to be great, and then people can't even get to a sprinkle. They can't agree. What if we were facilitating that planning, what would you do there? Because that's a big one for me.
Yeah, I think I had this, and so one thing that always usually works for me is I just usually ask them the question, okay, if there was really one thing, you know, when it really comes to it, when, you know, we come to our 2 weeks, what is the really one thing that you as a team would collaborate to get over the line? And then you, fairly honest, 9 out of 10 times they will come up, the answer will be there, because you start crafting your sprint goal. So it's more, that usually works for me.
Todd, I'm wondering this, as we're kind of running out of time, is why facilitation, like as a stance? Like we talked about, this is underrated, and always there's a lot, and it's not bad, it's really excellent, but a lot of people go, oh, let's take the coaching stance here, which there's a lot of it. How does somebody make that decision when coaching, when facilitation, when something else, you know, like how do we we're ultimately just trying to help in terms of helping teams have a little progress, move toward the goal. What do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. You know, I really wish there's a PST out there that described facilitation to me in a way, and I cannot remember. It was a face-to-face or something. So whoever you are, this is stuck in my mind for like many years now. I don't remember who it was though. But what they said when they were describing facilitation, if you Google definition for facilitation, so I'm looking at the definition of facilitator right now. It's a person or thing that makes an action or process easier, right? And so to Claudia, you mentioned before, right? Like when you're going into an event, a Scrum event, where you're going into a meeting, having explicit inputs and then an output in mind, right? And the idea as a facilitator is to take a stance to make and drive to that output or that outcome and make it easier, right? Make it easier. And that doesn't necessarily mean consensus. It doesn't have to mean consensus. It just means that you've made that event or that meeting and you've made it easier to come to that conclusion. That's always really stuck out to me. The person that kind of, for like, just Google the definition for facilitator. It's about making it easier. Coaching isn't that, right? Coaching isn't going into an event and making it easier to drive to an output or an outcome of that meeting. Coaching is not that. Coaching is a different stance altogether, right? I'm just rambling at this point.
No,
No,
I think
that's
we
great.
got, yeah, no, that was great. We're giving you that space of silence for us to reflect. No, so facilitation, it comes from, well, in French, facile, right? It makes it easy. So it does, it is, what can we do to make some of those things easier? And no shortcuts too. So, all right. So thank you everyone for today. We really learned about some great techniques from Todd and Gladia. Some techniques that they wish they applied in the past, and some tips on what you can do in the future. I hope this was good and useful for our listeners. Thanks for joining today. And also thank you, Todd and Gladia, for your time today. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing how this class goes, how the course is helpful for people when they think about these different dynamics they face on Agile and Scrum teams. And we'll be putting a lot of materials out for everyone to read, watch, consume, share, like. So thank you. That'll be it for me today. To learn more about the new professional Scrum facilitation skills training course, visit scrum.org/PSFS.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trish.